Good morning. So this time of year, my favorite cartoon was an old cartoon, a comic strip. Some of us remember what comic strips were like. There's a cat and a dog, and the cat turns to the dog and says, "What's with these humans and these New Year's resolutions?" And the dog wakes up from his nap and says, "Oh, don't worry about it. That's just their to-do list for the first week of the year." So I know this wise, motivated, beloved congregation isn't going to take their new year and do that with it. I know you guys better than that. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about embracing the truth. And most of you know I like to study intellectual things. So can I spin your mind for 5 minutes? I promise I'll bring you back. So what is this stuff we call the truth anyway? So I tell you here every Sunday I get a chance to, is that what Ernest Holmes told us is that he was a synthesizer. He took the nuggets of truth from every religious organization and spiritual teaching and tried to weave them into this truth that made sense to us. And he spent a lot of time doing that. And in a nutshell, that's what the Science of Mind textbook is his attempt to do that. But let's see how daunting this truth is, because you can talk to 100 people about the truth, and they'll probably give you 90 different ideas. Even if they're quoting what their church told them to say, a lot of them don't get it per the guidelines anyway, right? So, how do we get these truths? Let's talk about the traditions. There's the spoken word that's passed from generation to generation, and you get that from the Native American and the Hindu tradition. Actually, a Hindu tradition in the ancient Vedas textbook script, it's better if it's sung. And we Americans, when we take it out of context, we lose some of the meaning and certainly some of the beauty of it. There's these traditions, spiritual traditions. So what's the best way to get truth? Well, some spiritual traditions, such as the Mormon and the Muslim tradition, it's like a direct download from God, or from their essence of what they call the divine. And so they get that, Muhammad got it, and the text is written, and that's it, because that was the truest form of truth that they knew. So we have texts that have been compiled over hundreds of years. The Christian is in that tradition. I'd put in that tradition. And the Buddhist is certainly in that tradition. And the thing that the Buddhists do, which they're not the only ones, but their tradition is that the text continues to be written and written and written. So like the concept of the Bodhisattva, that came hundreds of years after the life of Buddha. So the Buddhist monks kept focusing, kept creating that consciousness. So let's move on to the philosophers. So I have a lot of time in my hands. I have a 40-minute commute to work each way, 4 days a week. So I've listened to lectures on all the main spiritual traditions and all the philosophers. And the philosophers do the same thing. So, and it started, I can bracket them with the philosopher that Ernest Holmes liked the most, and that was Plato. And the philosophers can be, I know I have some of my philosopher gurus in the house, so they'll have a conversation with me afterwards when I bracket these people. But the philosophers will be those that follow the ancient Hindu tradition that consciousness is the ground of all being, and there's a form that represents something beyond the physical. Swedenborg told us this, but Plato was the one that brought that forward. There's this perfect form beyond the physical, and it's represented in the physical. And Plato's proudest, grandest student, Aristotle, went the other way. Aristotle spent his life looking at what was out in the world, and he was one of the first to be known as this materialist philosophers, where the world is all there is. There's no divine guidance. There's no major plan by some deity to control the world. It's just billiard ball versus billiard ball hitting each other. No plan, just random order. And then there's the philosophers who combined the two that said, yes, the physical world does exist. And yes, there is something beyond the physical. And the best example of that would be Rene Descartes. So it's mind-boggling, what? And what will I tell you is the truth? I'm going to continue telling you all of the above. Because all of the above brings us a piece of something that can make our life better. Of something that can see us, allow us to see our life in a very, very different way. So what did Ernest Holmes tell us about the truth? And when I quote Ernest Holmes, I always try and go back to a book that he wrote where no one edited it. It's as the words fell from his lips and no one had time to edit it and say, oh, we should change this and change that. And this book I'm quoting from is Ernest Holmes Speaks. And he says this about truth. He says, we need to face life in the light of a new truth, a new understanding and a conviction that we are in partnership with the infinite. Then we may receive direct divine guidance and know how to live as human beings, because we first have discovered that we are divine beings. So the message there is the message that we've latched onto, that we sort of fall into the belief system that there's a power within us. And that power within us is divine. And there's this beautiful, divine, unique aspect that makes us powerful, makes us joyful, makes us compassionate, but definitely makes us unique. And the Hindu tradition has a saying, the one manifests as the many. But it all comes from the one. So we pick up on that the world is divine. We pick up on that consciousness is the ground of all being, and consciousness is the causal relationship for everything that we see. And we come here, we teach several things, but basically we teach principles that we can categorize, not that they're separated, as teachings of the head, teachings of the intellect. That's why teaching of spiritual principles, so we can understand them intellectually. That's why we teach classes here. And we have teachings of the heart and teachings of things that keep us grounded, keep us whole, keep us able to reach out to people. That's why meditation is a good thing. That's why we always recommend daily spiritual practice for everyone. And sort of the other part of that makes it the true trifecta is we gather here as this beloved spiritual community. So we have a place where we can come together and experience the love and compassion of others to us every Sunday or every class that we have. But just as important, it allows us to give that love and give that compassion to others. So in a nutshell, that's sort of what we look to do around here. And of course, hopefully I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. But there's I was reading a article about spirituality, and the author had some poignant points about taking your spirituality in earnestness. And so he started in the back of a Baptist church. And there was this lady back there that was saying, amen. They were reading the 10 Commandments. And she was giving in the 15 steps of conscious leadership, there's something called a full body yes, which means you're all in for that one. And she was saying amen to them all. Then it came to the adultery one. And she whispered to her neighbor, she says, now that's meddling a little bit. And the author's point was that, in our spirituality, maybe it's time to take it a little bit more serious, to kick it up a notch, kick it up a level. because he goes on to tell another story. And he's saying a lot of times we switch our spirituality and use spiritual talk to just meet the flitting ways that our non-mindfulness mind is working at the time. He tells a story of a lady who went to a doctor for a diet, and the doctor prescribed her a good diet. It was working well. And so she comes back, but before she came back, she says, I've lost so much weight. I think I can just sneak a few of those little old snacks that I used to eat. It'll be okay. I've lost 10 pounds. If I lose 8, it'll be fine. And she did, and shared it with the doctor. The doctor said, okay, let me do some blood work. And he gets her this glowing letter back. Your results are great, but my message to you is now change. Because what the doctor's message was that she needed to change her mindset because she was slipping back into that old fixed way of being, that old way, and that the change would not be permanent unless she left something behind, her old way of thinking. It's a powerful place for him to be. And he told us that 87% of people in the survey said they were religious. But when you brought it down, only 57% were practicing the spiritual practice of the religion they were associated with, especially what the more spiritual people had recommended for them to do. Only 57% were doing. So his message was all about getting a little more serious and focusing on your spiritual life, because there are many benefits to have, but it's up to us to change that. And now this time of year, it's a great time for us to go through 2 steps. The one step is the step of releasing or surrendering those things that no longer serve us. And this is really almost the most important step, because I told you here last week that God is always God, and we can change our mind, and we can always change our mind, but until we change our mind, our life never changes. Because we have this saying, if you keep doing what you've been doing, you're going to keep getting what you've got. But they say that's one of the biggest fears is change. And especially viewing with uncertainty. It's a big fear for us, a huge fear for us. But the truth, in my mind, is that we cannot have these great breakthroughs unless we release the things that are not working in our life. And so one of my favorite pulpit ministers is Dr. Roger Teal, who just retired from Mile High Church. And he tells a great story about a very hard release. And that story is the story of the caterpillar I've shared with you a time or two here. He says this is what's going on. There comes a point in time where the caterpillar has these imaginal cells with a new idea, a new thought, a new vision. And they start communicating that new vision to the other cells around them. Now, the caterpillar immune system doesn't like them because it's attacking the status quo. Because these new cells have a new thought, a new power, a new vision of what is yet to be for this caterpillar. And it continues to talk and communicate and speak to the cells around it. And finally, it reaches what scientists call critical unworkability. So the new vision is in place. It's starting to be this full body, yes. But the caterpillar has to give up, I keep calling him his, I guess that's okay, his old way of being. And he does. But there's a catch to it. He has to give up everything. He has to turn into a fluid. This caterpillar no longer has a structure, no longer has his comfort zone, no longer has that place where he can be his own, isolate from people, say other people are wrong. This caterpillar has to give up that he's been focusing on, that somehow has been rewarding to him, but not really. So he has to turn into this goo. And so now we're at this stage. And my question to you, you have 2 strips of paper in your program. So what I want you to do is write on one of those strips of paper. You notice I didn't tell you which color to write on? Because I'm going to get this 100% correctly, because either color is fine. So I want you to put yourself in this caterpillar mode. You've just realized your life wasn't working. You've gone back. You've become a fluid. You've become this goo. And all you have to do is look forward as what is yet to be. But you have to think about what you're willing to give up in your life. You may be justified about it. You may be using the saying, standing on my spiritual truth about it. You may be saying, this person deserves it. Or you may be saying, I've done that forever, and if I keep doing it, it might work. But it doesn't seem to work, but I'm going to keep doing it. So take some time and just write down what it is that you're going to release before you go into 2020. And then in the moment, I'm going to have Marjorie come by the center and collect those, or we just bring them to the back. Yeah. Okay. We've got enough time, so I'm going to give you a few seconds to do that. More pens up here, Marjorie. And keep in mind, if we keep focusing on what we've been focusing, it's very hard for us to move on. It's very hard for us to move on. Because that's what we've been defining our life with, is something, if it's not working, it's something probably coming from the external. We're saying the external is controlling us. And when we get to the step of embracing what's new, I'm going to try and convince you that it doesn't have to be that way. And it's illegal to use flash paper in California, so I'm not going to put them in a pile of smoke in front of you. And if you don't finish in the next few minutes, just dump it in the basket back there. But I will promise you that I will take all of these things that you wish, that you've committed to release. I will take them all to the most moonlit night I can on Huntington Beach itself, and I will bless them and send them back to where they came, back to the ashes, and I will burn them in a burn pit for you. So that's my commitment to you. And it will be a great spiritual practice for me in this life. So now, we've given up what we need to give up. How do we feel? Do we feel a little better about that? Yeah? Maybe a little poignant about it? Because sometimes they're hard things to give up. We've had them for 20 or 30 years. So now you're no longer this goo. You see, because you gave it up, you can make this transformation. You're no longer this goo. You're this nice, beautiful little fledgling butterfly. So now, you're brand new. You can bring joy and peace and compassion to everyone who sees you. So now it's time to figure out what you're going to embrace in 2020. What you're going to embrace. And there's this thing that's been dormant inside of you called the progression of spirit. That's been probably whispering this into your ear for decades. For decades, saying, yeah, you have the courage to step up and do this. And I don't want you to play small here, because the moment that we shrink our consciousness, when we shrink it down, when we shrink our vision down, we shrink what we can achieve. If we only think a certain ways, we've let a lot of the universe go outside. So you can come to this precipice of life, and you can look out, and you can see the entire world of possibilities, of potentials for you. There's good out there, there's evil out there, there's vindictiveness out there, there's joy out there, there's love out there, there's power out there. It's all yours to choose. And what can help you choose is, I believe, that we really are these divine, unique beings. And we didn't come here to survive, we came here to thrive. We came here to be all that we can be. And what stops us from doing that is a false belief. So you have to come up to the plate and make up your mind. Are you going to step through this barrier? Or are you going to allow it to control you? So you have to come here every day of your life and focus it on what you want. You have to access and use this beautiful, wonderful power of your mind to carry you through. You have to step up and ask, what is it I need to do today to fulfill this beautiful vision that I have? And the people that are successful in life continue to do that over and over and over again. And when they study it, what happens to people is they get things that happen in their life that they see as failures and see as not happening the way they want it. And then they fall into this belief system that the world is controlling me. But every day you can step up to your life, you can focus on your vision, you can say, if that didn't work, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. Studies of the most highly effective people in the world, that's what they had in common. They kept doing different things until something worked, something clicked. So that's the power that I want you to think about embracing. And that second piece of paper is for you. I want you to write that down and make that your vision and move your feet and ask what you can do to make that vision happen. And continue stepping up to your life and choosing your vision, making the statement is the world is not controlling me. My vision is what's controlling, actually materializing the things in the world for my highest and greatest good and those around me. And my vision is powerful. And my vision is coming from my divinity. I am not this person who has to earn things from external source. I am this person that's divine at the core, powerful beyond my measure, and a wonderful and spiritual and joyful and compassionate individual. And so when you get to that point where you're struggling, step up and do it all over again. And that's my sincerest wish for you. God bless you. I love you.